Vance turns on European allies in blistering speech that downplayed threats from Russia and China. U.S. Vice President JD Vance vented at European leaders Friday, telling them that the biggest threat to their security was from within rather than China and Russia. Vance used his first major speech as vice president to lambast European politicians, claiming they are suppressing free speech, losing control of immigration, and refusing to work with hard-right parties in government. The audience at the Munich Security Conference was expecting to hear about the Trump administration's plans to end the war in Ukraine, but instead were treated to a bombastic rejection of liberal orthodoxies that have prevailed in Western Europe since the Second World War, in a speech that downplayed the threats to the continent posed by Russia and China. The threat that I worry most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, not China. It's not any other external actor. What I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, Vance told a stone-faced audience. The vice president, who met with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky at the conference, said shutting down unorthodox viewpoints is the most surefire way to destroy democracy, and called on European leaders, who have been elected by their respective peoples, to embrace what your people tell you. If American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk, he said. The extraordinary remarks come after a campaign where Donald Trump vowed to disrupt the international status quo, and in office he has done exactly that at remarkable speed. Trump's early moves, including threats of retaliatory tariffs, a pullback in international aid, and an improbable overture to acquire Greenland, the autonomous Danish territory, have increasingly concerned America's allies. Compounding tensions, Elon Musk, the tech billionaire and prominent Trump ally, has amplified far-right movements across Europe without facing public reproach from the White House. The administration's actions this past week have only heightened anxieties across the Western world. Speaking Wednesday from Berlin, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth asserted that Ukraine shouldn't expect to reclaim its pre-war borders from Russia and would remain outside NATO. Hours later, Trump, following a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, announced that negotiations to end the war in Ukraine would commence immediately, potentially without Zelensky at the table. While Hegseth later attempted to soften his remarks, his clarification did little to allay Europe concerns that Washington and Moscow had already forged a deal with scant regard for Kyiv's position. Against that fraught backdrop, some anticipated Vance to address the administration's position on the path to a Russia-Ukraine settlement. Instead, he delivered a jarring blow. Vance listed a string of what he cast as an oppressive European responses to political expression, from the United Kingdom arresting a man for praying near an abortion clinic to Sweden, convicting an anti-Islam campaigner for burning Korans in public. While many have expected the vice president to echo Hegseth's calls for European countries to hike their defense spending as a precondition for continued American support, Vance's message was blunter. If you are running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Strikingly, Vance compared today's democratically elected European leaders to the tyrants that led swaths of the continent during the Cold War. He zeroed in on a decision by Romania's constitutional court to cancel the country's presidential election last year after its intelligence service uncovered a campaign coordinated by a state actor to help elect Călin Georgescu, an ultranationalist virtually unknown before the election who unexpectedly won the first-round vote. When we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we need to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard, Vance said. Vance asked what happened to some of the Cold War's winners, suggesting they had abandoned the values that allied them to prevail against tyrannical forces on the continent. Consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty, he said. The vice president's remarks in Munich come just over a week before the German national elections, in which the country is widely expected to swing right after a campaign season where immigration ranked among the key issues.